Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 15.5 Beta 1 has been out for over a week at this point, about a week and a half. I've been using it full-time on my iPhone 13 Pro Max and also my iPad Pro, and wanted to share the overall experience with you. Not only my experience, but your experience based off the YouTube community poll, where with this week and last week, we have over 30,000 different votes, almost 40,000 plus votes at this point, and over 100 comments on the latest poll. So I took all of that information to see if it's any different than we had about a week ago when I reviewed it. And there are some changes as far as that goes. But I did want to talk about that as well as your comments. I'll mention those at the end of the video where we'll talk about that, answer any questions you have, and more. But first, I wanted to talk about some new features or changes that have been found in this particular update since the initial What's New video. And the first thing has to do with Visual Lookup. Visual Lookup lets you go into your Photos app, and if you have a little star on the eye here, you can get more information about it. It will give you different information about what the flower is or the plant is, and you'll see it gives a couple different options here, a mountain laurel, or if we go maybe to the previous photo, this is actually the Oculus at the World Trade Center, so you can see more information about this. This is something we've had for a while, but apparently it's showing up in the UK. Thanks to a moderator or an admin on my Discord server, linked in the description below, this is apparently showing up in the UK. So it looks like it's being rolled out to more places. Prior to this, it was in some places such as Germany. Now it seems to be rolling out to additional places as well. So it's great to see features spread across different countries finally. Something else that's new is a new pop-up notification the first time you open up the App Store. Now this is not new to 15.5, but more and more people see this randomly and are messaging me telling me that it's new. So it's newer. I just wanted to make sure you're aware of it. And it says, be the first to get new app releases, special offers, and recommendations. Enable notifications or not now. So that's something that's newer within iOS. It's been there, I believe, since 15.4, but it randomly pops up the first time you open the App Store or just sometimes when you open it after you've had it for a while. Now, quite a few people enjoyed the video I did earlier in the week about new app updates. So there was a new app update for WhatsApp this week and new features coming to it with emoji reactions, file sharing, and larger voice calls. So those are all things going to WhatsApp. Now, this is not widely used in the United States, but I know that it is around the world. And so I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that they're going to have all of these features coming soon if you don't have them already. So emoji reactions, file sharing, and larger voice calls. Also, if you're on an M1 Mac and you use After Effects, they've finally added native M1 support. So it says it now launches up to 7 times faster and renders compositions twice as fast on M1 Macs compared to an Intel 10-core iMac Pro. So that's great news if you use After Effects on a Mac. Now, the overall experience of iOS 15.5 seems to be pretty solid overall and is probably the best version of a Beta 1 that we've seen in a long time. So this has been pretty stable, but there are a few issues that seem to show themselves once in a while. For example, right before I made this video, I typically airdrop the wallpaper that I have here to different devices, and AirDrop didn't work properly. I actually had to AirDrop it from the iPad, which is also running iPadOS 15.5 Beta 1, but for some reason wasn't working on the iPhone. So sometimes this seems to be a problem in 15.5, and I've heard from you that it's the same situation. So quite a few people are having that issue. I've also had some quick freezes and lockups, mostly in music, not too often, but I've also had some apps take very long to open. Sometimes when I open up a different app, it seems like it just takes forever to load and then will eventually work, or just crash. I'll open it again and it works fine. I've seen this on random apps from Eero to other apps as well, and sometimes they just take a while to load and then they work fine after that. So there's some odd issues here and there. Typically, they seem to be apps that access your network, though, that take a while. Also, I had an odd issue last night with my iPad connecting to a computer where I wasn't able to trust my computer. My Mac, it'll pop up and say, do you want to trust this computer? You hit trust, put in your passcode, and then you can get through. For some reason on the iPad connected to a MacBook Pro, it just didn't want to do that. It would pop up trust, you'd hit trust. Sometimes you'd get the passcode input and it would just go off the screen over and over. I tried rebooting the phone or tried rebooting the iPad, tried rebooting the Mac, and that didn't seem to fix it. So there's definitely some odd issues here and there. Those are issues I've had, but others have said that they've had it be a little bit slow and lock up. It doesn't really matter the device. Usually rebooting it fixes this. Also, going into the app switcher sometimes could be problematic for some people, where it would just sort of blur out overall, and a reboot would fix that. So if you go into the app switcher or multitasking and try and close apps, they just wouldn't be there. You wouldn't be able to see anything. It's just a big blur. So that's something I've heard from other people. And then also some odd touch responsiveness bugs where it just seems slow to respond. Now, this could be related to maybe a screen protector if you're having issues. So I would try maybe a different screen protector, but rebooting it, they said, seemed to fix it. So it may not be a screen protector. It could be related to the display. I would be curious to know that those who are experiencing that, if you've had your display replaced or anything, or if that's an issue for you. Also, some people said that they were having overheating issues to the point where they were actually getting the message saying that the phone is overheating. Typically, phones can get hot when they're using intensive processing and also when they're fast charging. That's pretty normal, but the iPhone regulates that. But if it gets too hot, it will tell you it's overheated and it needs to cool down. I've had some people say that it was overheating, actually saying it's overheating with this version. So downgrading seems to help that. If you're having that issue, that seems to be common this time around with Beta 1. Also, some people said syncing your photos across PhotoStream was not working properly. Now, not just iCloud photos, but PhotoStream itself, they weren't updating properly. So it seems to be some odd update issues with that, even though that was supposed to be fixed with 15.4 or 15.4.1. So some odd issues still going on there. I did hear from a couple people as well that AirPods aren't connecting as well as they used to. So AirPods Pro specifically, we'll give it just a moment here. And with all of these devices, sometimes it can be confused, but you'll see it still hasn't connected to my iPhone, and that's what I want it to connect to. It quickly came up on the iPad, still hasn't come up on the iPhone 11 and the iPhone 13 Pro Max. And there we go. I had to close it and reopen it. So occasionally there's some odd issues connecting. For the most part, it's been pretty stable for me, but it does seem to be a little bit slow, especially if you have multiple devices around. Now, as far as battery is concerned, quite a few of you continue to ask me for more and more detail about this. So I wanted to take a look at it. So we'll go into settings, go to battery and battery health. I'm at 100%. And I also used coconut battery to see how many cycles I've used on my iPhone. Many of you have been asking for additional details. So if we go into photos, you'll see this is coconut battery. And that's why I was trying to connect the iPad yesterday and it wouldn't authorize to trust my device. I was trying to see battery health. But you'll see based off this app here, it's a free app on the Mac, I have 118 cycles with my battery. A cycle is when you drain it from 100 to 0 and then back up, or any combination of that. So maybe last night I drained it to 50%, today it's down to 50%. 2 recharges of 50% equal 100. That's one cycle. So 118 cycles, I'm at 100% battery capacity. And I don't use a case on this, which helps keep it cool, but it will regulate itself and seems to be holding up well. I charge it every night on the charger at night and put it on the charger in my car. Both wireless chargers. I rarely use a lightning cable for charging. Now, battery life has been okay depending on the day. Yesterday, I used music quite a bit. It says 9 hours and 15 minutes of screen off time. I definitely didn't use it for that long, but 2 hours and 2 minutes of screen on time, using about 45% of my battery. So that's not really great for a 13 Pro Max. And the day I used the most battery, 3 hours and 54 minutes and 7 hours and 24 minutes of screen off time, and about 80% of my battery life was used. So not great for me, but it really depends on who you talk to of how it's lasting. I usually go to bed with about 50% left. As you saw on Coconut Battery here, I had 51.9%, and that was at about 2 a.m. last night. So it's lasting me through a day, no problem, but I use this with a combination of iPad and Mac. Now, as far as what Abhishek had to say, he sent in his battery life, and a few different people every so often send in their battery life. This is on an 11 Pro Max. He had 6 hours and 30 minutes of screen on time, 1 hour and 16 minutes of screen off time, and used about 70% of his battery. On the next day, again, 6 hours and 25 minutes with 1 hour and 23 minutes of screen off time. So pretty consistent. If he was to continue to use this, he'd probably get close to 9 hours of screen on time, which is pretty good, but not as good as 15.4.1. So with all of that, it makes sense that it's not as good with an early beta, but hopefully it gets better as we see later betas. On iPadOS, this is where it just continues to be poor for me. No matter if I reset the device or try over again, reinstall everything, I'm only getting about 5 hours of screen on time. You'll see yesterday 2 hours and 37 minutes with 47 minutes of screen off time. It really depends on the day. I'm not getting very good battery, but everything else has been more stable than the iPhone for me. So it just seems to be a battery issue with iPad. Performance has been pretty great for most people. In fact, almost no one mentions poor performance with iOS 15.5 at all. It doesn't matter what device you're on. It could be an iPhone 6S, 7, 8, it doesn't really matter. It seems to be nice and fast. On the newer devices, ProMotion is nice and smooth, seems to be operating at the speed you would expect. Everything is nice and smooth with that. And we're seeing more and more apps updated with ProMotion. So it's being a regular thing that we'll see on probably every single app in the future, but the developer does need to enable that. Now, I did run benchmarks just to share those with you. And with the single core, we actually have pretty consistent single cores, 1,730 on the iPhone 13 Pro Max and 4,608 for multi-core. Now, if we take a look at the history, it's actually not as great as last week, depending on which score we're looking at. So we're a little bit lower for single core and a little bit lower for multi-core. This can vary greatly depending on the day, of course, but I did run them on all these devices. So on the iPhone 8 Plus, let's switch over here, and then on the iPhone 11, and I'll share those with you. So for the iPhone 11 and 8 Plus, I'll read these out just for those of you that have asked me to that have visual impairments. And also let's go into Geekbench on the iPad Pro. So we'll start with the iPad Pro, 1,708 for single core, 7,310 for multi-core. On the iPhone 8 Plus, 923 for single core, 2,486 for multi-core. And then on the iPhone 11, 1,325 for single core, 3,400 for multi-core. So pretty good scores overall. It's performing well for most people and seems to be plenty fast. Now, as far as future iOS release versions, Apple stopped signing iOS 15.4. That means you can no longer downgrade to it. So that leaves us only with iOS 15.4.1 and 15.5 betas. Typically, when they do that, we'll see a public release within 2 to 3 weeks. That's not guaranteed every time, but since we're only on beta 1 of iOS 15.5, we could see a release of iOS 15.4.2 either this coming week or the following week if Apple decides they need to patch some bugs and security. So that's something we could see, as well as iOS 15.5 beta 2. Usually with early betas, we're on a 2-week or bi-weekly schedule, and I would expect beta 2 on Tuesday or Wednesday, usually like they do every couple of betas. So usually with beta 1, 2, and 3, we'll have bi-weekly releases, and then we switch to weekly releases. So expect beta 2 this coming week. And then, of course, beta 3, maybe 2 weeks out from that, with a final release of iOS 15.5, usually around WWDC on June 6th. So we'll see iOS 16 beta 1 on June 6th, and we'll also have iOS 15 betas all the way until September, where we have a public release of iOS 16. That's typically what Apple does every year. Also this weekend, we could hear some additional information about iPadOS 16 from Mark Gurman. He sort of hinted at this on Twitter, so maybe we'll find out a little bit more. He hasn't really given us a whole lot of information of iOS 16, but hopefully that's just because he doesn't know a ton about it and maybe Apple's hidden it very well. But either way, we might hear a little bit more on that. Now, if you're wondering if you should install iOS 15.5 beta 1 or update to it, I would typically say I wouldn't recommend it. However, this is a more stable beta than we've seen in a very long time, especially for an early beta. Now, you may want to wait until iOS 15.5 beta 2, but if you have a backup of what's on your phone and maybe a computer if you need to downgrade, then I would say go ahead and try it out. However, if you have critical apps or accessibility features that you want to make sure are working, I would probably hold off until the final release. But it seems to be more stable and you could try it out if you want. But again, if you have a secondary device, go ahead and try it. If it's on your main device, just be careful and make sure you have a backup. Now let's take a look at the YouTube community poll, and you'll see at the time of this video, there's over 15,000 votes and 118 comments. Now this time around, I asked a different set of questions, and you'll see 11% of you said iOS 15.5 beta 1 is great. 7% said iOS 15.5 beta 1 is the same as earlier iOS 15 versions, so that could be good or bad, and only 3% of you said it was terrible. So most of you are having an okay experience. 11% are saying that it's great. 70% of you are on public versions, iOS 15.4.1 or older, and 9% of you are on Android. Now let's take a look at some of the comments. I have my iPad with some of your comments on it, so let's go ahead and take a look at what you had to say. Graham Evans said, Beta 1 has been stable for me, iPhone 13. However, touchscreen response has been terrible to the point I fully restored my phone. However, it's still the same. A hard reset will fix it for a short time. I've also had slow connectivity with my AirPods Gen 2 and Pro. Hope Beta 2 fixes these problems for me. And that's where I said earlier in the video, I'm wondering if maybe you have a screen protector that maybe the phone doesn't like, or possibly you had the screen replaced. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below, and also those AirPods issues as well. So those AirPods not connecting properly seem to be a thing with this particular beta. Raghav VJ says, and hopefully I'm pronouncing that properly, iOS 15.4.1 on my iPhone XS is the best iOS 15 release in ages. My battery is insane. It may actually be one of the best versions of software I've ever had on this phone, and it's given me a crazy amount of battery life with iOS 15.4.1. It really is great battery. Also, performance is great as well. Jose Morales says, iOS 15.5 Beta 1, I had my iPhone 13 Pro Max freeze and reboot on me twice already. Now, I haven't had mine freeze and reboot, but I have had a couple small issues, like I said earlier, where it sort of just locked up temporarily and was fine after that. Terry said 12 Pro Max is buttery smooth on 15.5 Beta 1. Battery life is much better on the beta than 15.4.1. Strange, but true. So far, I've had no issues with this update. And like I said, most people are saying performance is great and battery seems to be hit or miss depending who you are and what device you're using and what apps and so on. Richard said, when I started using iOS 15.4 beta, my battery started overheating to about 107 degrees Fahrenheit. The issue didn't stop after I downgraded and I got my phone replaced under AppleCare. Now, I brought this comment into the video because I haven't really heard of anyone being able to replace their device because it gets hot. Now, if they were able to diagnose there was an actual issue, they would replace it, but I'm curious what they actually found. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Deepal Gandhi said, iPhone 10 with 15.5 Beta 1, major issues is with AirPod Pro connectivity, and battery is as good as earlier betas. So again, some more AirPod issues. Gaji says, hopefully I'm saying that properly again, a beta running like a charm on my iPhone 7. Tamar Kumash says, 15.5 iPhone 12 Pro for the first time ever has given me the overheating notification. Nothing has changed with how I handle my phone. And so, like I said earlier, some people are seeing it get overly hot to the point where you're getting that notification. Now, if you have a case on your phone, try removing that to cool it down a little bit, especially now that we're getting closer to summer. Will Newcomb says, my iPhone 12 Pro Max on 15.4.1 has had better battery life, about 8 hours with 87% health. For about a year after every software update, the battery has gotten worse with time, usually going down to 6.5 hours, but not now. It does get quite hot at times, which never happened before. Unknown said, ironically, iOS 15.4.1 claimed to make battery life on my 13 Pro Max better, but it in fact made it worse. So I decided to install 15.5 and surprise, battery life got way better. Apple really is losing their magic touch with software refinement. Then again, can't expect a company to stay number one forever. They stopped being that long ago. They do the bare minimum, but market it at the absolute maximum. Now, I would say they're actually getting better with iOS software updates, and I really think iOS 16 is going to focus on stability this year. But again, we'll have to wait and see. It's only a few weeks away, about 7 weeks or so at this point, until we see 16. So hopefully we'll see some major changes with that. Haley Wilson said, I'm on iOS 15.5 and battery life has been the best so far for me. Everything seems to be great. Looks like a performance-focused beta. Senway Souza says, Beta 1 is definitely looking stable, no bugs whatsoever on my iPhone 10. So that's it for iOS 15.5. Of course, Beta 2 is expected this coming week based off what Apple has done in the past, and maybe even a public release with iOS 15.4.1. But we're only about 7 weeks away from iOS 16. So I know a lot of people are more excited for that, so we should see some major changes with that. I hope most of the rumors are wrong, but iOS 16 rumors or iOS 15 rumors last year were very wrong. So I hope they're wrong this time around, and hopefully we see some major changes. Let me know what you're most excited about in the comments below. And Apple is also said to release a couple new Macs, up to maybe testing 9 different variations with Mac Pro and maybe even an iMac Pro. But again, let me know what you're most excited about in the comments below. If you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, of course, I'll link it in the description like I normally do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.